my abdomen. And it was not fun. And I kept trying to, I don't sleep on my back normally. I roll on my side.
Yeah.
I could not do that. It hurt too much. I had to lay on my back. And I kind of felt that, okay, the spirits are telling me that they're real. They're like proving it to me. And if I don't feel it, they'll poke harder. So I kind of got it in the end. And I know it's a strange and remarkable feeling if you haven't been through it, but it was like, the spirits run this place. And I get it now. So that's my take on John of God.
How does it work? What's he tapping into? How's he doing it?
Well, I think we're in a time, and obviously there have been earlier times when this is true too, where we have to recognize that spirits are real, they exist, and they can affect things in the physical world. And part of this, as a scientist trying to understand it, I would say, well, it's the torsion field, which has aspects of consciousness about it. It's a nonlinear field which can hold together and form conscious beings. So spirits can be made from the torsion field of the right type. So that's as a scientist. But the bottom line is that everything is not matter, and matter does not tell the whole story about what's out there.
Do you believe that these people have a gift from God or just knowledge of use?
You mean someone like John of God?
Yes.
I would say that their access comes from a much higher level of wisdom than I'm able to judge. So if they say it's God, that's fine with me. These higher levels of spirit, I'm convinced that they exist, and it's a level that I can't really, I would have to be at that level to understand it. If you can't do it, then it's unlikely that one has that level. So I think I can't really explain beyond that. I mean, we're kind of in an area here where science starts to fizzle out. We've kind of gone about as far as we can go at the moment, but it seems as though they have a contract with the spirits, and where the spirits work through them, and they are a vessel, but that, as John of God has said, he doesn't have to do the operations. He could just say, you're all healed, or as far as I'm concerned, I would say, well, the spirits are probably actually doing the work anyway. But he is sort of there as a meeting place or intermediary. And I'm sure there are people who understand this far better than I do. So, I'm kind of beyond my level of competence here.
Well, but at the same time, you're astute enough to know that there's more to real science than meets the eye.
Yes, and I think maybe one of the best tools that I have, and we all have, is our feelings, which is part of our intuition, and it's there's a certain feeling, just like when you go into a sacred space, you go to a place that has a very special energy, you can tell, and maybe we don't know quite why it has that level of energy or why it affects us, but we can tell that something is special, and that's what I was aware of.
Claude, who is Mohandri Trivedi?
He is an Indian that I came to know last year through Professor Rustum Roy at Penn State. Rustum Roy is the Pew Professor of Material Science. He's sort of one of the founders of material science almost in America, a big program, 1,000 papers. And he's also of Indian heritage, as is Mr. Trivedi. And he began working with him and got verification of certain abilities, the ability to change water so that Raman backscatter spectra were altered and things like that. And he also became aware of these other experiments that Trivedi was doing in India over a 10 or 12-year period, working with agricultural colleges, causing changes in crops. One of the classic cases was a mango spongy tissue disease, where mangoes look beautiful on the outside, but inside they can have their pulp can have a spongy quality, could be bitter, and be you can't sell them. And so they did an experiment with Mr. Trivedi, and you take half the field, we'll take half the field. We'll take half the field and treat it the way we normally do, fertilizer, etc. For Trivedi's half, he just did a blessing, for about a 4-minute blessing. For the next 4 years, his side of the field had no spongy tissue disease.
For 4 years?
Yes. Still ongoing,
Amazing.
I understand. Higher vitamin C quality, but several percent more mass, heavier fruit, etc. The same thing was done, the same type of thing was done with cashews with similar effect. So there have been a variety of 40 different plant species that they've tested, and they've all come up with effects of this type. So he's actually in America now, and looking for scientists, I think, to do experiments with. I think that's what's really needed now. I think for me, he's an unusual case because most of the yogis who go through normal yogic training, it's a much more spiritual oriented path, and they usually will not work with scientists. Mr. Trivedi did not go through the yogic training, but seems to have been given a message or some kind of spiritual guidance that this is what he's supposed to be doing. And so hopefully the only caveat here is that when someone has abilities of this type and we don't know exactly how they got them, that they can also lose them anytime. So we don't know how long this will continue, but at least for the moment, it's a very interesting case, an opportunity for scientists to look at the power of consciousness.
Do you find that these practitioners are generally good people, or have you ever stumbled across any of them that one would call pure evil?
Fortunately, I've never stumbled across a person of that description, but I do acknowledge that the ability to have PK powers or to affect things around us seems to be something that exists both in good people and people that are not so good. In fact, I just heard a story today from my cab driver that would be an example of that. I don't know if you want to hear it or not.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, he was
temper it, of course. Children are listening. Claude.
Well, yeah, I know. he was working with some Mexican laborers. They were picking fruit. I've kind of forgotten the details here, but he has quite an interest in the paranormal himself, and for some reason, he began telling them that he was basically a Mexican witch doctor. He had these powers, these occult powers, which is, of course, is a pretty scary thing.
Sure.
Now, I don't know why he felt the need to do this, but that night, he said he woke up around 2 or 3 in the morning, and it was the strangest thing. The room was totally dark, and there was something very strange about it, and he saw this figure floating in the air. And it was basically a Mexican witch doctor. It was and he could feel his soul, his being pulled out of his body, and he didn't know what to do, and he called on Jesus, and the creature vanished just like that, and he's talked to other people since then, and this is not that unusual. So, these are strange. As a scientist, what do you do with something like this? But as a person who, is telling what he experienced, it's a cautionary tale that there are spirits that might have a variety of different feelings about good and evil and what's appropriate.
Claude, let's take a step backward for a moment. We both agree this exists. It's out there. You can tap into it. It's part of this existence. Let's talk about the divine creator for a moment. Mm-hmm. There is no way all of this could be put together by accident, by random, by just a roll of the dice. There's no way.
Probably true.
Is that the physicist talking? The physicist just said probably.
Well, Einstein had his. The difficulty is that as a scientist that we're talking about areas that are beyond our training and even beyond our definition of what God is. We have to first agree on what God is. For me,
I don't think we can agree to that.
Probably not. For me, the best I can say is that I have met people. First of all, I believe that spirits exist. I believe that we have access to higher dimensional intelligence. We have guidance, oftentimes, of an intuitive type, from higher dimensional beings who seem wiser than we are. And I've met people who seem possessed of a higher dimensional intelligence and a higher dimensional wisdom. So I can extrapolate from that to a universal source that's above all, but that's about the best I could do.
I've got to believe that there is a higher power somehow. I just can't comprehend the fact that this was all an act of random, that there was chance, and even the fact, even if you believe in the Big Bang Theory, and I have my questions about how that started.
Me too.
The fact is something did start, and that alone should tell you that there's something else going on here.
I agree with that. I think what I like is more what I guess I would call the Hindu or the yogic perspective.
Which is?
Well, that we're all here to learn, that we incarnate in the human form to learn, and there are these higher dimensional levels on which our consciousness resides in between incarnations, and so we make these paths up and then paths back, and each time we sort of learn more lessons and become wiser. So
we're all Jonathan Livingston Seagulls, aren't we?
Well, I mean, what I like about that is that even misfortunes and tragedies have a positive side, and that we're all kind of getting better, at our own rate as we do that.
Well, I don't know. It's a big picture.
You're asking tough questions here.
It is a big picture. Well, we're going to take questions next hour from listeners and also stories. I'd like them to share with us stories similar to the one where the two cars almost collided and they did not. We'll do that next. With Dr. Claude Swanson, our special guest tonight with his latest work, Life Force. I'm George Norrie. Back in a moment on coasttocoastam.com. If you need to email me, that's George at coasttocoastam.com.